Hello and Vanakkam. This is Tachu on the Sip on It podcast. Today we are going to be talking about Indistractable by Nir Eyal. If you are someone who are stuck in the never-ending hell of doom scrolling, this episode is for you. As ashamed as I am to say it, please do follow me on Instagram. It will help me in reaching new listeners. Kindly ignore the irony and let's move on. The whole model behind Instagram, Facebook, or any digital product for that matter is to keep you hooked to it. We all saw that in the Black Mirror episode. But technology is not the reason why we are so distracted. We cannot deny it. A lot of people, including my parents and I, complain about how much of our time technology takes up, especially social media. I predominantly use Instagram, and I found that I was doom scrolling while watching TV or even while working. I wanted to control, but these short videos eat your time like crazy. And I have a timer on my phone for the app where if I reach that time, the app shuts itself for the day. And I can only access it the next day. Sounds like a chill deal, right? Well, no. Once the timer runs out, I go to YouTube Shorts. Yes, I am ashamed. No, I have no self-control. Which is why I picked this book. So, the author talks about making ourselves indistractable in 4 parts. The first part is to manage your internal triggers. Ask yourself why you are getting distracted. So, I put a timer on the application because I thought that Instagram was the reason why I was getting distracted. But in actuality, whatever I was doing was not engaging me enough, be it watching TV or even working for that matter. I could stop scrolling anytime but only if I wanted to. This was not Instagram's fault, is it? Ideally, if I am bored at work, I should either pick up tasks that are engaging to me or talk to my superior about my work itself. But both of these are uncomfortable situations and I would rather incline towards the doom scroll than confront it and make changes to the situation. So, when we feel that we are getting distracted, stop and analyze why and see if you can make any rectifications there. Be curious as to why you feel the need to do something else instead of feeling contempt. So, what's the solution here? Scheduling your time, or as he calls it, time boxing. It's unfair of me to expect to have interesting work all times. For instance, research is an interesting part of my job, but documenting the research and analysis is the most boring of it all. I have to interpret the data and present it in a way that is readable by both technical and non-technical teams. That is not the work I can really skip or ask to be reassigned to someone else, because it's my job. But we are all running on schedules and deadlines anyway. Why time box it? We have schedules and deadlines for work tasks, yes, of course. But do we have time schedule for social media or games on the phone? I don't think so. The reason he asks us to do is this. Scrolling through the scheduled social media time won't make us feel guilty about it. And once the time is over, we tend to move on to the next task on hand. So no matter how mundane or silly the task is, put a scheduled time for it so that you don't feel guilty of doing it. For instance, if you are someone who uses a phone in the bathroom, you can schedule the time to do the doom scroll. But again, don't outstay your welcome. The second part is to make time for the things that are meant to be done on the day, or as he calls it, traction. Schedule time for work, family, relationship, social media, game nights, or whatever it is that you do regularly. This is pretty common in the Western countries where they have dinner night, where the entire family gathers around to have dinner together. I think with the busy lives we lead, we might have to incorporate it in our homes as well. If you're in a working environment where they ping you constantly for sudden meetings, share your calendar with your team so that they understand when you can and cannot be disturbed. This way, you will not be distracted by sudden meetings or group discussion on Slack. Do not push away activities like video games or social media or any kind of tech consumption by terming them as bad. As long as you're doing it without feeling guilty, it's okay. Technology has become such a huge part of our lives that it almost feels ridiculous to voluntarily not use it. Sometimes I do feel like switching to a basic mobile, but most of my updates on current affairs and events in the city are from social media. It used to be from newspapers, but in order to reduce the junk, we just don't buy papers anymore. So, taking control of your technology time will aid in bringing that balance between tech and real life. third part is to figure out the external triggers. Have you ever been in the place where you open your phone to check on a notification only to have accidentally spent 20 minutes reading the news? Yes, that notification is the external trigger. My office desktop gives me news feed now and then. Every time I check my Slack messages, I spend a couple of minutes reading news from the feed. Sometimes it is one article, sometimes it goes up to 4. It is wild how I qualify for every example stated in this book. Again, the way to skip this is to schedule your time. If I am being distracted by my Slack message, I can schedule 3 to 5 minutes per hour to respond to any messages instead of replying it then and there. The same is applicable for emails as well. If you're someone who gets a lot of emails, you can schedule a time to check and respond at a set time. I used to do this in my previous job as everything was communicated in emails. I usually come with a fresh mind in the morning, so I don't respond to mails in the morning. I do it around 2 to 3 pm because that is when I come back from lunch in a very half-sleepy trance. You can also schedule it based on how soon the email needs replying. When it comes to mobile phones, a lot of us have push notifications for all apps in the phone. Reduce it only to a few apps you actually need on your phone. For instance, I have notifications switched on only for calls, messages, WhatsApp and Slack. I don't even have the email notification on. It can wait till my office hours. Of course, there is an extra step in switching off the notification every time you install a new app, but I think that is okay. I have found that push notifications are my number one trigger. Imagine working in full Josh and you get a notification from Myntra or Zomato. Those guys do an amazing job in tempting you to get in. So I have switched them off for good. The fourth is to make a pact. Imagine back then when people were working with a pen and paper in the office. Can they suddenly start reading a book in the middle of workday? No, because their colleagues will start staring and might even escalate it to the higher official. But today, we are all working on laptops and no one knows what we are working on. It's worse in a remote setting because the likelihood of getting distracted from work is higher. There used to be apps for this as well. It will be like an interactive timer where you can set scheduled work time and there will be a tree or chicken growing. If you pick up your phone before the time runs out, the tree or the chicken will die. There are now virtual study rooms where people can walk in and study without being disturbed by anyone or anything. This way, you are committing to a bunch of people to give them company to study. Next is identity pact. Say you are on a diet where you don't drink Coke. When offered, you can either say I can't drink it or I don't drink it. It makes such a huge difference because you can't gives a negative reinforcement, while do not gives you a positive one. Can't feels like it's been imposed on us while don't is something voluntary. So when you are getting distracted, instead of telling that I can't or I shouldn't, you can simply say that you don't want to. There are also wonderful insights about how to keep children from excessive technology usage. One way is of course scheduling. Giving them the scheduled screen time, game time and whatever it is that pleases them. And another is the autonomy when it comes to decision on screen time. We can educate them about the harms of technology and ask them what their preferred minutes or hours of screen time is, instead of imposing a specific time on them. This way, they are in complete control of their schedule and time. If at all they exceed it, it can be re-evaluated later on. It is also suggested to have a scheduled family time so that they find and understand the balance by themselves instead of being imposed upon. I am not a parent, hence I couldn't really relate to it much, but if you are interested in reading about it, please do pick up the book. I think in this time and day, it is really necessary to create boundaries early in life so that it will help them into adulthood. If you listen carefully, I pretty much do everything the author has suggested, which means what I lack is simply self-control and the willpower to stay off the grid when I want to. I was shocked when I read the book because I pretty much do most of it and I still suffer to find the balance. But the book did open my eye in understanding that all the triggers that make me pick up the phone or even my book are coming from inside me. No, it is not the technology's fault. The book really humbled me when I realized that it is my fault. Whether you have an Android or an iPhone, there will be an option called Digital Wellbeing, where you can see every day your screen time and even set timers on apps. The first time I saw, my heart broke. I was averaging 5 hours of screen time a day. Of course, I read books on my phone and I played some games when I needed a reset at work. Even then, out of the 5 hours, I was spending almost 2 hours on Instagram alone. I was definitely not proud of it and I was desperate to change it. It's not the app creators' fault. They have a business model they need to stick to, and we have a life model that we need to stick to. Each of us have different ways to spend our time. While I feel guilty about 2 hours of Instagram, my husband is perfectly happy with more than 2 hours on Insta and Twitter. He doesn't feel guilty or bad about it because somewhere, somehow, he found the balance. So this book does not necessarily tell you that you need to time box or reduce your distractions no matter what. This book is for someone who wants to be more productive and present in the now instead of spending more time than intended on activities. So, if you're someone who recognizes that you're spending a lot of time doing something that isn't really necessary but don't know how to work around it, this book is definitely for you. Technology is not the bad guy here. When there were books, people were addicted to reading. When I was young, my dad would scold me for watching a lot of TV. Better the technology got, the poorer we became in finding balance. The book is Indistractable by Nir Eyal. I will let you sip on it and see you in the next one. Bye.